Hello everyone. Today's episode is called The Celestial Writer's Pen. And what I really want to suggest here is that I've had some profound experiences in writing. And so I want to communicate what even the concept of a celestial writer is trying to touch. You see, when you become self-aware and you in a sense see that your internal realms are just as vast as your external, you become observant of your present moment, because that becomes your, in a sense, pillar of existence. That is what is immediately there for you to work with. Now, as you become aware of life and you see that, okay, first you thought you were an idea, now that idea is working less with identification, and so now you're just a presence. You're flowing through life, you're experiencing life more beautifully, and that's actually the best way to measure your life, how beautiful your life is. And beauty is a personal thing, so you really got to see that same taste you have for good food, how much is it for an efficient and healthy life? And so you must not get to work, but continue the work that you're doing. So again, kind of take this back, you will see that writers will begin writing, and when they write, that's a very significant, powerful moment. When you're sitting in front of the blank page, it's like your first step into a new world, if you're sensitive to how terminology is present in your reality. So once you begin writing, the intensity of your words will create such emotions within you that you will see that the writing is automatically being done, and so you're just in this wave of energy, and it's kind of like a daydream-like state where your perception is mixed with many things, and so it's going very fast. So in other words, suddenly you feel the certainty in your hand to be one that is continuing on its own, because an aspect of your individuality is trusting more of its collective expression. And so then you will see what will be written is not something from a higher being, even though it can be translated that way, but is in essence the greatest way and most allowed way your moment can grow. So I like to use nature's metaphor and nature's metaphors, and what that really means is that you see that in imagery, in natural imagery, for example, a flower sprouting, it is sprouting not because of some linear agenda, but because it is your time. So an aspect of your existence is working with the knowing of nature. And if you're not sure, just ask your heartbeat. Because when you breathe, you're in a sense feeling the life that you are. You are seeing how alive you are. So the way the system is maintained is constantly under attention, similar to how the world in front of you has to be present when you open your eyes. So we are existent in multidimensional senses, which then move beyond our locality of consideration of space and time. And so you will see that the writer has written books, but in his mind, he was just in one beautiful moment, a moment beyond time, beyond space. You can see that even memories in your childhood give you an access to jump off them into higher states of consciousness. And higher states of consciousness means really how you are navigating between the dimensions of your consideration. So I am using general dimensions. What that means is that your multidimensionality is actually very personal to you, but now for the consciousness of man, Mr.Within is trying to, in a bit, very poetically and mystically, try to give shape to the unknown, so we begin continuing our steps into our greater awareness. Because all that you think you don't know is in the unknown, and the unknown is, in a sense, all that is. So you will see that sometimes man creates his own certainty without realizing that he's creating his own reality. And so that certainty will then be temporal if it's based on form. But in this search for a greater truth, you will see that there was never a search in the same way you thought. There was always something that would change, an alchemy, a transformation, a re-understanding. In other words, if you could go back into the eyes of every memory you stood still in, what would be those movements? And you would see you are carrying the movements of all your senses of consideration in the present moment. And you might be still sitting on a couch, but within you, the essence of you is whirling around, spiraling into magnificence constantly because of your ability to consider. So you might think that your day is pretty normal, and you might suddenly see something cool or something awesome or beautiful, and you're just like, oh, nice. But internally, what is happening is like some allowances have been given to you when a beautiful expression is present to be seen once you are. And all these, in a sense, communicate that you, before you are a writer, you are an aspect of life. You are alive. Your existence before you exist in a certain way. And that awareness to a simple present existence, one that is observant of form and aware of its formless, in a sense, transcendent view, then in your own sense of clarity, you will initiate yourself by waking your personality up. So what that means is that many people realize the ability of consciousness outside of ideology. That's when you have a profound experience. But suddenly you see that this ideology is now needs to change because you want to come back to society. In other words, if you were just a person who at the end of your death you went into that transcendent view, it's fine. But once you still have a body and you go into these collective states of consciousness and then come back into your individuation, you will see you're not coming back to your individuation. You are just found to be present in it, but it's as if a shift of spotlight. And so suddenly in that transition, in that one moment where all planets align and the order of your mind is acknowledging its chaos, you shall see that there is no perfect moment because there is no imagery that can capture the vastness of the human experience. Because then you will see in your writing, whether this also applies to speaking as well, but specifically for writing, you will see that the reason you have writer's block is because you're not allowing yourselves some ways of thinking. And so that is why you're blocked. Anytime you have a block of creativity, there is something in your life that you're not being observant of. And so you need to immediately be observant of your life and your shapes and the forms in your life because they inspire you. So consciousness recognizes that it is energized by its awareness to form. So you will see as a being, when you become aware of the forms present around you, the forms that you see, what will happen is that you will find that you're no longer holding swords, but being the piece of the wavering flag that all men could see. You will see that you are the answer. The journey you thought you had to go through was the transformation of the ideology which you have thought is you. And so when thought thinks, there's no such thing. There's nothingness. There's irrelevance. We are saying we are a thought that thinks, and we're considering all these dimensions as if they're forms. So in other words, we're considering what we don't know as just nothing until we see it. And that is ridiculous, because then you're not tapping into the intelligence of the body. The finger is forgetting the palm is forgetting the arm. And your arms will remember to embrace all that you are. So navigate. Reality shifts. I play with reality in the sense that I just observe it as presence. And when you observe it as presence, you're no longer looking, like intuition is not in the same relationship. So many people who are like, gosh, I know there's intuitive stuff, but what is it? What is intuition? You know, you're lost in a dynamic of thought where you're considering it from a very solidified state of being. What that means is that without trust in your solidity, your observance cannot be fluid in its transformation. In other words, once you're heated up, what occurs is that you either you stop or you do not break your machine. So what that means is ideas and ideology, in essence, and language, these are vehicles which man is using to be present in, but only an aspect of his presence. So for example, when I tell you my name is Amin, I'm not completely telling you everything about myself. I'm just telling you I'm being present in a subtler way of consideration in which we both agree that that is real. And what really happens is that reality begins to shift when your agreement is no longer external, because you're aware of the dimensions within, of how within you there is a empty and very clear, stable ground that all is stemming from. You will see this, because multidimensionality is also an area which it's a technology. It needs to be developed. So language and all this needs to be constantly broken into and reclarified by the new generations. So many people they appreciate history, but history should not delay the progress of the present. Because history at times gives too solid frames of who you are. And so you will see that it's like, for example, if you were around someone who said, oh, you're such a good guy, you're such a good guy, one day you might like drop a plastic, like, let's say chocolate bar wrapper, and you're like, gosh, I'm not a good guy, because that's the state. You see, when people talk to you, if you're not aware of how you are making that association, if you're not aware of sound before you put meaning or extract meaning, you will be thrown into other people's confusion. Confusion is never, there is no reason for confusion to ever be there, because confusion begins when an idea tries to look at itself but cannot. And very gracefully, I want to say that there has been moments where I have began writing where at the beginning you're aware of the room, where you're in, and in a sense, the page, and then suddenly you become more aware to your thoughts, you know, and then you are suddenly becoming so aware to your thoughts that it's as if you're dissolving into becoming that experience, and suddenly it's as if you can write with your eyes closed because your whole body, your whole being is writing that intention. It's as if like your inspiration, the divine inspiration that is within man, absorbs man's ideology when it begins to acknowledge itself more directly through direct experience, through the moment that is very beautifully now. Do you see the beauty in now? You know? So many people look at their watches to get a certainty of how late they are, but without a watch, men have existed, and they have watched in different ways, and those ways have given them more existential permission than a watch around your hand could. Because you have to be aware of the many realms you're walking through, because if you don't, you're not acknowledging the many shapes that you're suddenly being and suddenly you're associating with and not disassociating. What that means is that it's like a field. It's like you're walking somewhere, and if you're not aware of the mud on your shoes, then you just be like, gosh, my life is getting slow. Maybe it's because of my body, who I am. And then you go into deep existential questions that are unnecessary at times. What that means is that certain deep questions are necessary in regards to how close they are to the proximity of the city and the main population. So back in the day, there were shamans, rishis, elders, just pretty much people who were very aware and so indulged into understanding the nature of reality that they would leave society because they would see the hollowness it creates. Society does not, you don't just see tall or skyscrapers in cities. You also see very tall ideologies that have been constructed over years. In other words, the history of man actually never existed when he acknowledges his existence in greater dimensions than that of thought projection. Because color is also on that point where if you're not such sensitive to it, it becomes thought projection. What that means is that the child wants to get what it wants to get, it wants to see what it wants to see, unless it becomes aware that it is more than a child, because it has the awareness of its environment. So stillness gives a great allowance to see the movements of your life. And so if you're someone who, in a sense, might feel you have writer's block, you want to do an activity but you cannot, there is some aspect, something in life that is not, in a sense, letting this activity be done freely. Mr.Within's suggestion, very playfully, would be, is that stop doing anything, stop writing, thinking you're a writer, thinking even you're the person you know. Just stop and look and observe. And you see that observance does not need to be there with an idea. You can be still in moments of being where there's literally no thought. It's as if the reflection, the pond is completely clear. But the moment you begin throwing rocks in the pond, I mean, of course it's going to be rippled when you try to see your reflection. So it's important how you look at your reflection, how you look at the nature of reality, because many people are looking at their own interpretation of reality. And so the mind of man has to learn from itself, in a sense, to deconstruct that which is not creating space for expansion of the constructed parts. You will see that the most great, best writer ever was never there. It's as if the pen was being moved, not invisibly, not by anything that could hold it, but by all that existed. So you are dissolved into a moment of being, and so regardless whether it's your finger moving or your tongue when you speak, you will see that you are not just opening worlds internally within your dimension, but the immediacy of wanting to communicate into blending and integrating your different aspects of knowing means that you are taking the responsibility of a multidimensional bridge of existence. You are realizing that there was never a stargate outside of you. Your immediate moment of awareness was access to all that could be present. And so the study of presence becomes more crucial because it's existential, because it's acknowledging more dimensions of your being. And so when the pilots of consciousness wake up, when beings begin recognizing that there are dimensions of themselves who are standing here, these dimensions of themselves are just profound. In other words, I thought I was just a physical body. And I realized as long as I'm thinking, oh, I am, and so the world does not need to change unless I choose to look at it differently. And so how much have you chosen to look at your world differently? Because, my friends, the word world is very close to the world, to the word word. So let me say this more clearly. The term world is very close in spelling to the term word. So you see that there is one L that is, in a sense, between these letters that is changing reality. So a word has not turned into a world. And you see that there is a silent L just standing between the W-O-R-D, as if you're waiting for lunch in line. And you will see that the minute the L becomes significance, the minute love becomes significant in the terminology, you will then see a world. I'm trying to extract some playful route from these words into some meaning, but I think it came across well. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that illusion begins with your attention and how you're concentrating into reality, how you're looking at reality. You are a much more complex being because you will see that the intelligence of your environment is only understood through you. So it is your intelligence. So you will begin taking more responsibility existentially. You won't think in terms of, oh, okay, that's someone else's problem. I got work to do tomorrow. You begin seeing, I'm a moment of existence. I'm alive. This is the expression I am. And so this expression, every moment has an ability to help people. So you don't think just help as in just helping people in need. You become a moment of clear expression where in your excited and wonder state of joy, you're intuitively flowing through life with a much more expanded self-awareness to all that you thought was the little thing missing. You will wake up when you have already woken up, and it's a funny feeling. So many people use the metaphor of being asleep and then being up in regards to acknowledging reality in certain traditions and cultures. So I want to say you can also wake up after you've wake up. So right now you're up, you're in the day, right? So you will see that there is certain subtler dimensions to who you are when you pay attention to yourself that only you are at first keeping there, but also co-creating with. So it's as if our mind needs to be present in a dynamic where there is a known, trusting the unknown to expand. Expansion has always been a step out. And so you will see that once you have completely looked and been into every room in your house, you will step at the front door of your house before stepping completely out, and you just see that you must trust the outside world to then begin seeing the outside world trust you. So as long as you are present in a reality where there is a sense of you can't, the way you handle it is not by saying, I can, but still having the psychology of that state of consciousness. The way you get out of it, let's take Einstein's advice. The same consciousness that created the problem, the answer would not be in that state of consciousness. The answer would be in a greater state of consciousness. And what that means is that the way you're aware of your condition now, if you just stopped, just for an instant, just breathe like the ocean and just recognize your stillness, you would then, by looking at the situation again, totally see something else. Many people don't understand that anger is not like one thing. It's not like something you can't control. It's not like the Hulk. Every instant, every moment where you're alive and you're acting, you're alive, you're getting a projection of reality, which there's a value that's making you behave that way. There never needs to be a value that makes you behave in a way where your awareness shifts. So if your awareness is shifting, that means there's still an individual consideration. You must go through some experiences to then recognize the vastness of your collective consciousness. Because the minute you do, there's a clarity because you're not keeping things stuck to this dimension. What that means is that before man approaches truth, he must explore the nature of his being to then see that there are aspects to his self-knowing, into his self-observance that are unspeakable. They are multidimensional. They're not communicatable based on the languages that are limited to the shape of one environment, because there are many worlds, just as there are many words. And the writer will then see that he was getting dissolved into the action, that your moment of being is actually an artist on its own, regardless of who you think you're artistically close to. You know, regardless of how you measure yourself, you're always beyond your measurement. So your progression and your, in a sense, growth is being done in the light of your greater knowing. You're just not clearly there because your personality has only come this far. Personalities do not need to be kept. So if you think, gosh, I'm just a happy person, gosh, I'm just a sad person, well, that's not true. In an instant, you could see a YouTube video and laugh. You know, a thug life compilation, you'd laugh, you know. So it's all in your mind and your attention and your concentration to reality. We have not properly acknowledged the state of being of the human. We have properly acknowledged the bodies of the human being, which are at a certain sensitivity, which science requires to pull forward very proudly and should. However, on the greater dimensions, we must see that there are many ways of looking at the earth. And similar to how you can have your eyesight from here and your eyesight from the top of a mountain, you see that reality is transitioning with every step in which you are creating an awareness. In other words, when you step into a new room, how you're aware of that, it's a natural phenomena. And to observe nature means to stop doing anything and to see that everything is being done, including all aspects of you. So what dissolves man's ideology is his greater experience, which can no longer be turned. And so as an existential alchemy occurs, the writer will find that he is no longer just a writer. He's a celestial writer, because there's a sense of omniscience, omnipresence, a collective inspiration to in a sense, communicate it. And you will see that the allowances that will come for you to write will be profound. So that means that sometimes I have written words and I have never written them in that state of being before. And it's so profound, because, for example, there is one way of writing the word love, and there's one way of writing it in such a context that you will see love is the roots of the tree keeping all branches of reality together. You will see that love is never just the fluffy idea of it, which culture feeds you because you're hungry in that way. The enormity of your being is beyond conception. That is how this conception is kept. And so, very playfully, my friends, and to anyone who is going through a moment where they're wondering if they should begin writing or not, let me tell you, I had first sat down long time ago when I was a different person, and I tried to write. And I heard Ernest Hemingway's quote, "Write drunk, edit sober," and I was like, woo, it's going to be a party, right? So I would drink and I would try to write something. I thought my inspiration would come in my physical, let's say, mellowness or numbness, right? However, your ability as a writer and communicator comes from how real you know what you're communicating. So if you were to write right now something about, let's say, a spoon, you have used the spoon enough times to be like, gosh, I'm going to write the greatest poem of a spoon, you know? The spoon that they didn't let him in the club. Gosh. Anyways, to continue. So you will see that your approach as a moment of existence is your inspiration. So sometimes it is beyond you. So sometimes you need to forget that you're here. You need to just get absorbed in your fascination, and to then see that you will get things, you will suddenly know things, you will in a sense be aware of things in such an inspired way where your hands are bursting to just write words. Sometimes you will just in a sense see that the flow of the thoughts and the inspiration coming to you is coming at such a speed that you don't have even time to write it, so you simply become still and observe and in a sense playfully appreciate the moment. Man's technologies in regards to consciousness must develop from thought. So man, his biggest and most important advancement is in how he is observant of his terminology and his language. It is only then when true leaders show themselves. For there are great leaders among us who they are kept under the prisons of language. Words of other men are in their ears and they have forgotten their own voice. And so I hope in the grace of a sense of serenity that is not bound to thought, that is not bound to even a need to communicate, you really see that it is okay to be you, and it is okay, and you have the permission to write what you want, but write with sincerity. If you write without sincerity, or you in a sense copy or do something, you will create a hollowness in your life, as if something happened, you got credit for it, but gosh, you weren't involved in it. That to the experience of perhaps a rock star who's singing his life out on stage. You know, you can see the difference, and you got to choose to adjust your intensity. And I think for me, the best way to balance the mind of man, especially a mind who is seeking the creative arena, you will see that you need to have an acknowledgement of the chaotic aspects of reality and also the ordered aspects of reality. So in other words, how you simply do work is that you actually don't need any self-book. If you were to right now increase your existential attention, in other words, suddenly really remember who you are on a very vast and, in a sense, your own true knowing way, you would suddenly see that you don't require much to become self-aware. You actually require so little that you're even letting go of the idea of you. So what really occurs is that the mind of man observes himself to a point that he can move beyond himself in conception. So think of it this way, that you have a toy right now, and let's say this toy is a physical body. Now, after you're done playing this, once you're done playing with that toy in so many ways, suddenly you become aware of another manner. You suddenly see that, gosh, it's as if like there's greater toys, so you don't feel the same. You feel like, gosh, this lifestyle's not fitting me. It's as if I know I could be present in a much more creative and spontaneous and more wonderful reality, right? Because that is why you think your life is dull, because you cannot see how it can be wonderful. And so it's really important to really be wondrous in life. Perhaps one of the most important traits that in a sense, guides a human being. So when you become sensitive to form, you will see that your inspiration will flow. I thought I could not write. I thought that I had to get intoxicated to write something, and I never could. But I noticed writing and the creative arts are not really driven by your mindset of trying to make money. If you are, you're going to be a very limited artist. So in other words, if you're going to be someone who's saying, all right, I'm expressing myself, I'm giving aspects of my creativity, which many people are, because I cannot tell you how many producers I have met, how many artists I have met who are, in a sense, just waiting to, in a sense, see a greater spotlight. And it's a permission which they must give themselves to produce to the peak of their ability. What that means is that if you really understood the concept of challenging yourself, you would have no time for others because you're always driven by your greatest vision. And when I say no time for others, you have no time for others' thoughts and ideas, but you will see that in that emptiness of clarity of doing your own thing and also, in a sense, being playful with your environment, you will have a balanced life. Because trust me, the human instrument is sensitive. If you hold it too hard, you'll feel that you're playing life awkwardly. So give yourself some space. Give yourself some space. And how you do that is that if you're running in a world where you're always thinking you're caught up in things, you simply need to just be in simplicity. Be calm. Be simple. Be a simple human being, just for a little while. Just for a few minutes, breathe. And simple is not an idea. Simple means you're too simple to even think about it. You're just here. And so go have a very peaceful walk in the park or your backyard or even into the books that paint pictures of, greater forests. You really allow yourself when you see that you're doing the action. So lead yourself towards action. It's important. And never forget the beauty of the memory of starlight you are. You are an existential awareness. You are present with all existence. And so there are some ways that you are significant to your own reality that no one else can allow you to see other than yourself. And so that is how you really get into being more of an intuitive person, because you are seeing that the technology of just only structured and rational thinking in a changing world is really irrational. So what that means is that if I only use the same laws in a world that's infinitely changing and it's so cyclical, I am limiting myself to just one state of association, which I thought was the only state of association. It is your responsibility to get yourself moving after you have kept yourself somewhere, after you have forgotten to attend that meeting you had to, so you need to get going. Just get up. And this is an existential, I'm saying this in an existential way, in a consciousness way. So see that you're present and breathe. And so, very pleasantly, as Thich Nhat Hanh has suggested, the graceful Zen master, smile, breathe, and go slowly. And these three terms will, in a sense, guide your life. In other words, Thich Nhat Hanh, by saying these quotes and bringing them to existence, and Mr.Within's suggestion of how you should interpret it and utilize it, will, in a sense, give you a great tool of management. So whatever situation you're about to go, whether you're about to go on stage to do a performance in front of judges who have heavy fingers, or you want to, in a sense, go completely the opposite and go in a cave of your own solitude and just dissolve into your own experience. Regardless, being aware is the moment. Much blessings, and may the celestial riders really see what their pen is holding. The pen is holding not just your fingers, but all realms of existence that you know. And when you have the allowance for it to communicate, then you will see every word written was always empty when you knew about the blank page before words came into being. And as you guide yourself, so shall your words turn into companions that will guide you too.